The Chosen Ones, the battle you never saw coming. The citadel of Oriali stood like a jewel carved from dawn itself, its silver spires rising high above the clouds, catching the first rays of sunlight that broke across the horizon. Once, its walls had been blackened by war, cracked and bloodstained from centuries of divine conflict. But now, the scars had been sealed with gold, the banners restored, and the bells of victory rang for the first time in an age. The Chosen had returned home. From every corner of the fractured world, they gathered. Angels who had shed blood in heaven's name, mortals who bore the marks of divine favor, and beings neither holy nor damned, but bound by the same vow, to preserve the fragile order born from centuries of ruin. The skies above were clear, painted in serene shades of violet and gold. The sacred flames that burned across the citadel's grand hall swayed gently, their light soft and steady. The air itself carried a sense of renewal. For once, the world was quiet, too quiet. Lyra stood at the edge of the citadel's terrace, her gaze lost in the endless stretch of clouds below. She was the youngest among the Chosen, barely more than a girl when the wars ended, yet already burdened with memories no child should bear. Her armor, light and silver, caught the wind as it brushed against her. On her forearm glowed a faint sigil, the mark of the Chosen, once burning bright as a star, now pulsing like a heartbeat at rest. Peace, they called it. But Lyra could not feel it. Inside the great hall, the remaining Chosen feasted. Long tables overflowed with fruit and wine, and the music of crystal chimes filled the air. Laughter echoed beneath vaulted ceilings painted with celestial scenes. For many, this night was the first time in years they could lower their weapons without fear. Kale sat among them, his once battle-worn face softened by rare calm. He spoke with Saren, the leader of the Chosen, her golden hair dimmed by time, yet her presence still commanding. "The world is healing," Kale said, raising his cup. "You've done what no one else could, Saren. Even heaven must see that now." Saren's eyes, however, were distant. "Heaven sees all, Kale," she said quietly, "but it does not speak." The silence that followed was uneasy. Kale's smile faltered, but he said nothing more. At the far end of the hall, the sacred flames flickered, dimming for a heartbeat before steadying again. None noticed, except Lyra. She stood in the doorway, her fingers brushing the faintly glowing mark on her wrist. It felt colder than usual. The warmth that had always comforted her after battle was fading, replaced by a strange emptiness she could not name. The music played on, and laughter filled the space, but to her, it sounded distant, like echoes from a memory long gone. Later that night, while others slept, Lyra wandered the citadel corridors. The marble floors reflected the moonlight streaming through tall glass windows. The air smelled of incense and old prayers. Her steps echoed softly, the sound mingling with the whisper of the wind. Every few paces she passed the statues of the fallen heroes of the Great Purge, each immortalized in stone. Their expressions were solemn, their eyes fixed heavenward. But one statue had cracked down the middle, its face split cleanly in two. Lyra paused before it. The inscription read, "To the Chosen who gave everything for purity." She frowned. The word purity tasted bitter now. Too many had died beneath its banner. A soft sound drew her attention, a distant hum, low and rhythmic, like a pulse beneath the stone. She followed it through winding corridors until she reached the chamber of the flame, where the eternal fire burned as the symbol of heaven's watchful eye. The chamber was empty, save for the great brazier at its center. The flame, once bright white, now shimmered faintly blue. Lyra approached, her heart tightening. "You're fading," she whispered. A gust of cold wind swept through the chamber, though the doors remained shut. The flame flared once, as if in response, then dimmed again to a soft, dying glow. She felt the hairs on her neck rise. Something unseen stirred in the shadows beyond the light. "Lyra!" She spun around, her hand instinctively reaching for the dagger at her hip. Kale stood in the doorway, his brow furrowed. The faint shimmer of his own divine mark illuminated his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "The flame needs to rest, as do you." Lyra shook her head. "It's weakening, look at it." Cale's eyes followed hers to the brazier. For a moment doubt crossed his face, but then he forced a smile. "You're tired, we all are. The war ended, Lyra, it's over." She stepped closer to him. "Does it feel over to you? The silence, it's not peace, it's waiting, like the world is holding its breath." Cale sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You think too much for someone so young." "And you don't think enough," she shot back, softer this time. He gave a short laugh. "Maybe that's why I still sleep." Lyra turned back to the flame, her reflection shimmering faintly in its blue light. "Cale, what if heaven didn't stop watching because it's at peace? What if it turned away?" His smile faded. "You've been talking to Saren." "She feels it too, doesn't she?" Lyra whispered. Cale hesitated. "She feels the weight of leadership. That's all. The rest of us, we just need to believe again." "Believe in what?" Lyra asked, turning to face him fully. "A heaven that stays silent, a light that's fading." Cale said nothing. The fire between them flickered weakly, casting long, uncertain shadows across their faces. The next morning, dawn broke over Aurealis in colors too red for comfort. The sky burned like the aftermath of war, though no battle had been fought. The bells rang again, calling the chosen to prayer. They gathered in the Hall of Light, kneeling before the flame that now glowed pale and cold. Saren led the hymn, her voice steady, but beneath the surface trembled the weight of unspoken fear. As Lyra joined the circle, she glanced toward Cale. He knelt in silence, his eyes closed, but his mark shone brighter than the others, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. She couldn't tell if it was a blessing or a warning. When the hymn ended, Saren rose. "Peace is a fragile thing," she said, her voice echoing through the hall. "It is not gifted, it is built. But if our peace was born of silence, then we must ask ourselves, whose silence is it?" The chosen murmured uneasily. Lyra's heart quickened. Saren's eyes met hers across the chamber, and for a fleeting moment, Lyra thought she saw fear there. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, though no storm clouds could be seen. The ground trembled. The sacred flames flickered once more. And somewhere deep beneath the citadel, a faint, echoing sound rose, like a heartbeat awakening after centuries of slumber. Lyra turned to Cale, whispering, "I told you, the war never ends quietly." He didn't answer. His eyes were on the horizon, where a single plume of black smoke curled upward into the morning sky. The peace of Aurealis had lasted one night. The storm had already begun. The dawn came gray and thin, a pale light creeping slowly across the skies above Aurealis. The banners that once danced with warmth now hung still, heavy with dew. The sacred bells, which should have rung to welcome the morning prayer, remained silent, as if the citadel itself dared not disturb the stillness that cloaked the world. Then the wind began to rise. It was no ordinary wind, not the soft breath of the high mountain air Lyra had grown used to, but something deeper. It moved with intent, curling through stone corridors, stirring the ashes in the brazier halls, whispering through the sleeping quarters like a voice half forgotten. The first to awaken were the sentinels posted along the eastern wall. They felt it before they heard it, a chill that seeped through armor, a vibration that hummed in their bones. One of them, a young watchman named Saren, stepped toward the marble archway to look outside. His breath misted, though it was spring. Then he saw them. Runes, faint at first, then growing brighter, began to carve themselves into the walls. The lines glowed with a light neither gold nor silver, but something older, something raw. They twisted across the marble like living veins, each symbol pulsing with slow, deliberate rhythm. Saren dropped to his knees. "By the light," he whispered, "what is this?" But the wind answered him, a whisper so soft it barely seemed real. "The battle is already chosen. You are not prepared." The runes flared, and Saren screamed as a shadow passed over him. When the others came running, they found him trembling, eyes wide open, his armor frostbitten from within. The message on the wall pulsed once more, then dimmed, as if it had spoken and now waited for its words to take root. By sunrise, panic had spread through the citadel. The halls of Orialis, once filled with prayers and hymns, echoed now with murmurs and hurried footsteps. The High Seer, an ancient figure who had once spoken directly with heaven's messengers, stood before the Council of the Chosen, his jeweled staff planted firmly into the floor. "These are tricks of the Shadowed Ones," he said, voice trembling but proud. "False prophecies meant to unmake our faith. Heaven speaks only through its servants, and I alone hear its call." But even as he spoke, the wind rose again. The flames in the braziers guttered, bending toward the chamber's center. The golden mosaics along the walls rippled as if alive, and once more the runes appeared, this time on the floor beneath the council's feet. "The silence you worship will consume you." The room fell silent. Kale stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the marble. Enough riddles. Who dares mock the chosen in their own sanctum? Lyra's eyes were fixed on the message. The runes flickered, and for an instant she thought she saw shapes within them, faces, perhaps, or reflections of something trying to break through the surface of the world. She whispered, "It's not mockery, it's a warning." Saren turned to her, her expression unreadable. "You feel it too, don't you?" Lyra nodded slowly. The mark on her forearm had begun to burn faintly the moment the wind began, a pulse of heat that throbbed in time with the runes. Kale's voice broke through the tension. "If this is heaven's doing, then whose?" Saren's eyes narrowed, something older. That night the citadel did not sleep. Priests tried to cleanse the walls with holy fire, but the runes would not fade. Every attempt only made them shift, their symbols rearranging like living thought, forming new messages. "The gate is already open. The light that you worship is not your own." By midnight, a storm had gathered around Orialis. The whispering wind had grown into a tempest, tearing through the banners and howling through the broken spires. Yet within its roar, the voices continued, countless, layered, all speaking in tones that were neither male nor female, human nor divine. Lyra walked the inner cloisters with Kale beside her. Their lanterns flickered, casting unsteady light over the ancient murals depicting the war of creation. The heroes carved into the walls, the first chosen, seemed to move in the torchlight, their eyes following the two as they passed. "I don't like this," Kale muttered. "It's as if the walls are alive." "They are," Lyra replied softly. "Everything in Orialis was built with fragments of the old world. The stones remember." She stopped suddenly. The runes had appeared again, this time on the ground before them, glowing faintly blue. "One of you carries the lost flame. One of you will end the rest." Kale froze. "What does that mean?" Lyra's voice trembled. "It means we've been marked again." The moment she said it, her mark blazed with light. It burned so fiercely that she fell to one knee, clutching her arm. The pain was deep, not in her flesh, but in her soul, as if something inside her was awakening. Kale knelt beside her. "Lyra, what's happening?" Through gritted teeth, she whispered, "It's not heaven. This is something else, something calling from beneath the light." The wind screamed, rattling the stained glass windows until they shattered. The shards rained down around them like dying stars. And from the shadows at the end of the corridor, a voice spoke, low and cold, but carrying a weight that pressed on the heart. "You were never chosen, you were claimed." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The voice seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, from the wind, the stone, even from within her own mind. Kale drew his blade, its edge flickering with divine fire. "Show yourself." The darkness shifted, forming a silhouette tall, indistinct like smoke trapped in the shape of a man. Its eyes glowed faintly, not red or gold, but the same color as the dying flame from the sacred chamber, pale blue, sorrowful, infinite. "Your gods made promises they could not keep," it whispered, "and when they failed, they left you to bear the weight of their silence." Saren appeared behind them, her cloak swirling as she stepped into the hall. "You speak lies, spirit," she said. "Heaven's silence is not abandonment, it is mercy." The shadow's form rippled. "Then tell me, daughter of light, why do your marks burn? Why does your sacred flame fade? Why does heaven not answer when you call?" Saren faltered. Lyra rose to her feet, her marks still blazing. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head as though amused. "Once I was what you worshipped, now I am what remains." And with that the wind struck, a surge of force that hurled them backward. The light shattered, the corridors filled with screams, and the shadow dispersed into 1,000 streams of mist, each one whispering the same final words before vanishing into the night. "The battle is already chosen. You are not prepared." By dawn, the citadel lay in ruin. Dozens of the chosen were injured, several were dead, their bodies untouched but their marks burned to ash. The High Seer's staff was broken, his voice gone. The sacred flame, once eternal, had gone dark. In the silent aftermath, Saren gathered the survivors in the courtyard. The air was heavy with grief and fear. Lyra stood beside Kale, her eyes hollow. Saren spoke at last, her voice hoarse. "This is not the work of demons or men. We are facing something far beyond the wars we knew." Kale clenched his fists. "Then what do we do?" Saren turned toward the blackened sky. "We listen to what the silence has to say." Lyra looked up as the first rays of cold light touched the towers. Her mark still glowed faintly, a reminder of the voice that had spoken in the storm. Somewhere far beyond the mountains, she thought she could hear the wind again, not howling this time but whispering her name. And in her heart she knew the truth. The gods had turned away. The chosen were alone. And the war they had ended was only sleeping. Now it was beginning to wake. The wind that carried the whispers from Orialis did not stop at the mountains. It swept beyond the citadel's shining walls, down through the frozen valleys and over the silent plains, until it reached the place where sunlight dared not linger, the Valley of Shadows. There, in a land drowned in mist and memory, something stirred. The valley stretched endlessly, carved by the scars of old wars. Obsidian monoliths jutted from the ground like the bones of dead gods. Rivers of ash wound their way between ruined altars, and the air shimmered with the faint hum of cursed light, the remnants of divine power left behind when heaven turned away. It was here that they gathered. The forgotten, the condemned, the fallen chosen. They were not demons, not entirely. Once they had been heroes of the same order that now ruled Orialis, defenders of light, bearers of the sacred marks. But when heaven's silence had begun and doubt crept through their ranks, they had questioned the divine order. For that they were cast out, their marks burned black, their names erased from the book of eternity. Yet now, in the darkness of the valley, those marks glowed again, not gold or silver, but a fire darker than night itself. From the fog emerged figures clad in fractured armor, their wings torn or bound by chains of shadow. Some bore weapons forged from corrupted flame, others carried relics stolen from the sanctuaries of heaven. Their eyes gleamed faintly with hollow light, reflecting pain, betrayal, and purpose. And among them walked one, whose presence made even the shadows bow. He was called the Masked One, the first of the fallen, once the most favored among the chosen, the one who had stood closest to the divine throne before the silence began. His name had been erased from every sacred record, but his memory lingered like a wound in heaven itself. His armor was forged of celestial steel, cracked and burning with black fire. His mask, a smooth, silver faceplate etched with symbols of both light and darkness, hid the man beneath, though his eyes shone through with the pale gleam of dying stars. When he spoke, His voice carried through the valley like thunder smothered in velvet. "They thought the prophecy was over," he said softly. "They thought their victory sealed the fate of the world, but prophecies don't end, they evolve. They shift sides." The fallen knelt before him, their ranks stretching into the mist. A woman with white hair and shattered wings stepped forward. "The flame that once burned in heaven flickers now in Oriales," she said. "The silence grows. Soon they will see what they refuse to believe." The masked one nodded. "And when they do, they will beg for the very mercy they once denied." He turned his gaze toward the distant mountains where Oriales stood hidden in the clouds. "They called us traitors, but what is faith without truth? What is light without shadow? I will show them both." Far above, storm clouds began to gather, though the valley had not seen rain in years. Lightning cracked across the sky, black and gold, illuminating the shapes of the fallen army as it spread across the wasteland. At its center burned a sigil of reversal, a massive circle of runes carved into the earth, pulsating with alternating waves of light and dark. Each time the sigil flared, the ground trembled, and the mist deepened, forming walls that concealed the army from divine sight. The masked one stepped into the center of the sigil, placing his hand upon its core. The runes responded instantly, twisting and shifting like serpents. A deep hum filled the air, and with it came a vision, the faces of the chosen in Oriales, laughing, feasting, celebrating their supposed peace. He smiled beneath the mask. "Peace," he whispered, "the sweetest lie of all." A figure approached him from the edge of the circle, a soldier of the fallen, his armor burned black by the mark's corruption. "The others wait for your command, my lord. The gates will open at your word." "Not yet," said the masked one. "The time is near, but not here. Let them believe they are safe. Let them dream." He looked skyward, where even the stars seemed to hide behind drifting smoke. "When the light fails, they will call upon heaven, and when heaven remains silent, they will call upon me." That night the valley came alive with fire. Campfires burned with eerie blue flames that did not consume the wood they touched. Shadows danced in strange patterns, whispering in languages lost before the first dawn. The fallen trained, their movements precise and silent, every swing of a sword, every whispered incantation, every drop of sweat, a vow of vengeance. One of them, a young man named Dareth, sat apart from the others, polishing his blade. He had been barely 20 when he was cast out. The mark on his neck still ached from the day it turned black. He turned to his companion, a scarred woman with pale eyes. "Do you ever wonder," he asked, "if heaven was right to cast us down?" The woman smiled bitterly. "If they were right, why do we still breathe?" Dareth frowned. "Maybe this," he gestured at the valley, "the mist, the shadows, isn't life. Maybe it's punishment." "Then let's make our punishment worth something," she replied. "If we're damned, let us at least damn the ones who made us so." They both looked toward the masked one, who stood alone upon a ridge, his black fire flickering against the storm. Even from afar, his presence was overwhelming, part savior, part monster. When midnight came, the masked one raised his hand and silence fell across the valley. The fires dimmed, the mist stilled. He spoke again, and his words carried far beyond mortal hearing. "Once I believed as they did. I fought for light, for faith, for purity. But the gods demanded too much and gave too little. When their silence came, I sought them. I begged them for answers. Do you know what I found?" He removed his mask. The gathered army gasped, for beneath it was not the face of a man but a hollow void, a space where divinity and humanity had torn each other apart. From that emptiness, a faint glow emerged, the remnant of the divine mark, pulsing like a black heart. "I found nothing," he said. "No voice, no presence, only the echo of their abandonment, and in that echo I heard the truth." He placed the mask back upon his face. "We are not fallen, we are freed." The army roared in response, a sound like thunder rolling through eternity. The masked one lifted his sword high, and its blade ignited with dark fire. "The age of silence ends," he proclaimed. "Let the chosen remember what it means to be chosen, to bleed, to break, to suffer. For light and shadow were never enemies. They were always the same." Far above the valley, unseen by mortal eyes, something ancient stirred. The clouds parted for a moment, revealing a glimpse of a vast shape moving across the heavens, wings of impossible size, eyes like dying suns. The air shuddered under its passing, and the stars flickered as though afraid. The masked one raised his head. "Even they wake to watch," he murmured. "Let them, let all of creation bear witness." Then turning back to his army, he said, "March when the third moon wanes. The citadel will fall not to hatred but to truth." As the fallen began to move, the mist swallowed them once more. Their footsteps were silent, their resolve unbroken. And in the distance, across mountains and rivers, Lyra awoke from uneasy sleep, her mark blazing with sudden pain. She did not yet know why, only that somewhere beyond the veil of mist, something once holy had turned its gaze back toward her. The wind outside whispered through the open windows of Oriales. It carried the faint echo of a voice she had heard once before. They thought the prophecy was over. It's only shifting sides. The attack came without warning. While the citadel still slept, dark arrows rained from the sky. Walls that once glowed with holy wards cracked apart. Kale led the defense, shouting commands as shadows poured in. Lyra saw it all. The prophecy wasn't about war. It was about betrayal. Someone among them had opened the gates. When the battle reached the inner sanctum, the truth emerged. The High Seer, blinded by jealousy, had made a pact with the fallen. He believed heaven had chosen the wrong saviors, and he wanted balance restored by blood. Lyra faced him beneath the broken sigil of light. "You taught us faith," she said, "but you forgot what it meant." With a single strike, she shattered his corrupted staff, breaking the seal that bound the fallen to their vengeance. As dawn broke, the remaining chosen stood over the ruins of their citadel. They had won but barely. The prophecy was fulfilled not by victory, but by survival. Lyra looked to the rising sun and whispered, "The next battle won't warn us. It's already waiting. We just haven't seen it yet." And somewhere beyond the horizon, the dark army reformed, watching, waiting, ready to strike again.